On a seemingly ordinary Monday morning, the clock marked 9:07 a.m., and for Trevor, a technology engineer in the quaint town of Willow Creek, the day had quickly escalated into sheer chaos, was deep into a virtual presentation, a crucial one for a client known for their short temper, when his computer screen glitched, flickered, and then, like a candle snuffed by an unseen hand, went dark. The jarring stillness that followed was both terrifying and perplexing. A digital void had replaced his carefully crafted slideshow, and an impending dread settled in his stomach, resonating with the concealed stakes of his job. With adrenaline surging through him, Trevor leaped from his desk and rushed outside, driven by a hunch that he hoped was incorrect, but felt so very right. Outside, he spotted her. Dressed in light gray capris and an outrageous chartreuse sun hat, Mabel stood there, garden shears in hand, curiously innocent, yet menacingly cheerful, like a character out of a dark comedy. At the edge of his lawn, beside the rusty electrical post where the cabling snaked into their homes, Mabel was standing when he approached, humming a distorted version of "What a Wonderful World," a demented smile plastered on her face. He couldn't fathom the motivation behind her antics. His breath caught as he followed a severed coaxial cable that resembled a crime scene clue across his meticulously mowed lawn to where Mabel was utterly engrossed in her phone. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered, half laughing and half prepared to explode with anger. "Relax," she chirped, without looking up. "You'll thank me later." It was hideous. "That was my internet line. You just sliced through my work connection," Trevor exclaimed, finding it difficult to suppress the tremor of fury in his voice. Exuding a smug confidence, Mabel finally glanced at him. Her look was a blend of superiority and condescension. "Maybe your work shouldn't rely on illegal wires running through our community. We have rules, darling." The urge to retaliate surged within Trevor. He could unleash his fury, let her know just who she was messing with. However, he bit back the bile rising in his throat. Something held him firm. Perhaps it was the offhand way she scrolled through her phone, the ridiculous nature of the encounter, or the simple fact that Mabel had no clue of his identity. He wasn't just a guy working from home. He was a senior technical engineer for the local internet service provider, ISP, a vital force behind the connectivity that was so readily taken for granted by neighbors like her. Clenching his fists at his side, he turned back toward the chaos of his home where emails pinged endlessly, his phone vibrating with alerts, an unyielding reminder of the high stakes resting upon the cut cable. A brief message had to be sent. Some Karen-induced service interruption. "I'll be offline temporarily." Moments later, his boss responded with something resembling disbelief, a mixture of humor and exasperation. How did one even prepare for a confrontation with someone like Mabel? He refused to be wrangled into her ridiculous drama. Instead, Trevor's mind shifted gears, and he sprang into action. After making a few calls, not to law enforcement or the HOA board, but to his own team, he gained access to the neighborhood's network logs, uncovering a trove of details that confirmed what he already knew. That line had been installed legally, professionally, and with all appropriate permissions. His investigator's mindset captured every detail in snapshots and timestamps. He documented everything, from meticulous photos of the severed cable to the footage from his security camera that captured Mabel in her moment of crime. Suddenly, rage turned clinical. This was more than personal. This was his professional territory, and Mabel had ignited a clinical focus deep within him. Outside, Mabel continued her landscaping escapades, wholly unconcerned. He glanced at the severed cable in his now sweaty palm, and she offered unsolicited advice. You know, if you want internet, you could always get one of those portable hotspots. That's what civilized folks do when they don't want to leave unsightly wires around. Perhaps he'd struck gold, he thought, as the desire for revenge simmered within him. And maybe don't cut other people's power lines, he shot back, allowing a smirk to curl on his lips. For a brief moment, shock fluttered across her face before her forced grin returned, determined to win the imaginary battle of wits. Across the street, the mailman strolled by, casting Trevor a sympathetic glance. "She cut yours too?" he asked, laughing as if they were engaged in a comical exchange on a sitcom. "Yeah," Trevor replied, envisioning the parallel disasters Mabel had birthed in other homes. "There are rumors around that she's done this before." "Always something," he quipped before leaning closer. "I got a call from another neighbor last week who missed an important exam because of her. It's always the same story. HOA standards." Something inside Trevor shifted. Mabel was not just an annoyance. She was a repeat villain. The priority shifted for Trevor. There would be time for fury later. For now, strategy ruled the day. Later that night, as he gathered his thoughts, the imposition of a letter arrived from the HOA outlining newly updated aesthetic standards that they had clearly been keeping a close watch over. Right at the end of the PDF, one new rule jumped out. All visible external utility connections must be relocated underground when possible. Trevor felt a rush of vindication wash over him. Equipped with this newfound advantage, he grabbed a flashlight and headed back outside to survey the damage. He intended to conduct a quick fix that would temporarily restore his internet and shield him from the chaos Mabel endeavored to create. Little did she know that tomorrow, rather than place a simple service call through his ISP, he would be rerouting his entire neighborhood to a faster fiber optic cabling system, one he would personally oversee. Except, of course, Mabel's address would not make the list, and that was where the fun would truly begin. The sun rose the next morning with an air of exhilarating anticipation. Trevor awoke not from insomnia, but rather from an anticipation of a well-executed plan. He relished the brewing coffee. It was a steady ascent into chaos that remained firmly within his grasp. As he logged into his work portal that morning, a wave of excitement washed over him as he began reviewing the listings for the neighborhood. Filtering through the addresses, Mabel's home stood out, a reminder of her brash actions. His suspicion was confirmed when he discovered that her internet operated through a shared segment located near the very node that plugged into his property. Yes, her actions had constituted a fundamental miscalculation, ignoring the integrity of the entire network she depended upon. The next step came when it was time for the HOA board meeting, scheduled for that evening. 10 minutes early, Trevor strode through the doors of the community center, armed with a folder full of evidence, the very proof that was necessary to bring justice against Mabel. As she entered the room with a faux celebrity flair, Mabel was clearly prepared for battle, throwing sheathed smiles and exaggerated waves to her circle of hand-picked supporters. She took her seat at the head of the folding table, exuding a self-important air that the board members collectively rolled their eyes at. "I'd like to propose an agenda addition before we start," Mabel chirped, her voice saccharine sweet. "This concerns unauthorized visual clutter that detracts from the community image, specifically those ugly utility wires." Several board members exchanged glances, their eyebrows shooting upwards in disbelief. One older gentleman interjected, Are you referring to the cable you cut yesterday? Precisely. Mabel beamed as if to collect a medal of honor for her aggressiveness. She pointed at Trevor with a finger glistening with disdain. It was an eyesore, and I simply took action. That cable was legally installed, Trevor protested, remaining calm under her piercing gaze. I'm the one who oversaw the installation, and you had no right to cut it. Mabel crossed her arms. It should have been better hidden if it was so vital. This was not mere banter. This was a battle looming. Trevor stood his ground. You damaged a critical utility line that your house relied upon. If you had cut a few inches higher, you would have taken out multiple properties, including your own. Gasps filled the air as the board members took in what he had just revealed. The HOA president cleared his throat and leaned forward, looking Mabel squarely in the eye. Mabel, we have received complaints in the past about interference with private property. This matter is serious. I merely did what was best for our community, she protested, but her smug confidence began to wane. I work for the very company that provides service here, Trevor interjected with a soft smile. You're lucky. Depending on your actions, the server will likely flag your address as a high-risk site. Your service is likely to slow significantly over time. The mood shifted dramatically as titters escaped from around the table. He reveled briefly in that satisfaction. Mabel surged to her feet. You can't do that. That's retaliation and illegal. What's illegal, Trevor countered, is damaging someone's property and disrupting a utility service. I was just pruning, Mabel shouted, though the conviction was gone. Trevor maintained his steady tone. You were cutting intentionally, and it's documented. I'm lucky we're not filing charges against you. For the first time, Mabel's air of dominance cracked, and she turned to the board, desperate for allies. Are you seriously going to allow this? The community wants order. Mabel, I think you need to step out, the president said flatly. We will handle this matter without your input. As Mabel stormed out in a huff, the remaining board members looked uncertain, but the president cleared his throat. This board will not be taking action against Trevor. In fact, we thank him for his contributions. A feeling of relief washed over him as Mabel disappeared from the meeting. He could finally breathe. His systematic approach had worked. When he returned home that night, he logged into the engineering interface, initiating plans for the neighborhood, prepping for a complete fiber optic upgrade. Sure, Mabel's abode would remain trapped on the failing copper line with a compliance flag preventing any upgrades. Her story would unfold into a nasty corner of irony for her alone. Days passed with the neighborhood buzzing about the new infrastructure developments. Vehicles lined the street, cables were laid, and cheers echoed from excited residents as they shared their newfound internet speeds. But Mabel remained unaware of the gravity of her mistakes. The vortex of chaos didn't come from Trevor. It originated from Mabel herself. Soon her complaints turned into nonsensical rants, exploding onto the community forum with wild accusations. It only intensified the community's resilience that was blossoming from the installations, while Mabel's remained weak. She finally escalated her complaints to Trevor's bosses, demanding his removal. Nevertheless, the justification had been nothing but a consequence of her own making. That Friday evening, Trevor prepared for yet another HOA meeting, one that Mabel had scheduled. The buzz around the community was exhilarating. He could feel the anticipation from his neighbors. Many had come ready to support him as the tides had truly turned. Mabel began her well-rehearsed speech, recalling tales of conspiracy and bias, painted herself as a victim, but all it took was for Trevor to reveal a simple video recorded outside, with Mabel precisely cutting the cable in question. Laughter escaped from neighbors as he relayed detailed customer feedback regarding the internet speeds that newly blossomed in the neighborhood due to the upgraded infrastructure. Many named him and thanked him for changing the community's distorted state of connectivity. When the president suggested Mabel should prepare to leave the meeting, the whispers from the crowd honed in on her arrogance. With overwhelming affirmation, the board dismissed all her claims and promised to conduct follow-ups on future violations stemming from her actions. She left the room red-faced and overwhelmed. But Trevor wasn't done yet. An unexpected letter arrived for Mabel from the ISP's office detailing the financial ramifications of her actions, an expense that surpassed $3,000. He could only imagine the turmoil it would create in her life, orchestrated by her own blinded decisions. Mabel's reactions transitioned from furious complaints to deafening silence, a near parody echoing through the neighborhood. It became painfully clear that chaos had transformed Mabel into a recluse within her own castle, losing connections she once wielded over everyone else. In the weeks that followed, a for sale sign appeared on her lawn, a mundane pinprick against the colorful tapestry of the community. Neighbors rejoiced as old tensions faded away. Mabel was leaving, and with her departure came the silence of a heavy season fully lifted from everyone's spirits. One day, while visiting an elegant little home to oversee the new installation for the new homeowners who had moved into Mabel's former residence, Trevor was met with bright-eyed excitement and unexpected warmth. The bonds of connectivity and camaraderie now grew freely across their lawns, ones that Mabel had tried to sever in her pursuit of control. A rush of laughter sparked when one of the new homeowners exclaimed they had inherited a document titled "Why I Refuse to Apologize to the Cable Guy," and they handed it over with cheeky curiosity. Trevor couldn't help but chuckle at the twisted ending of a tale spun so heavily. The neighborhood was now vibrant, and as the sun dipped low, illuminating the streets in warm hues, all chatter turned toward the future of their connections. And Trevor felt a peace settle in as the neighborhood reclaimed their spirits. Days turned into weeks, and Trevor finally noticed a notification trickle in. A review submitted through the ISP's feedback portal caught his eye. The message was brief but poignant, celebrating change without malice. You didn't raise a voice. You didn't seek revenge. You just flipped a switch. That's real power. He smiled knowingly, understanding exactly what this signified. Mabel had unraveled a tapestry of connectivity, and in her hubris, unknowingly flagged her own defeat. What began with a severed cable had transformed into a powerful narrative of community and collective resilience, proving once and for all that sometimes it's through quietness and steady action that true progress finds its way. Where the sound of laughter had replaced the clashing of shovels and stubborn wills. Finally, the neighborhood belonged to its people again, free from the strain of a self-anointed ruler, and Trevor could sense the lasting lesson. True connection isn't about wires, but the spirit shared through community. As the last light faded from the sky, Trevor allowed himself a moment of reflection. It was all behind him now. Mabel, her chaos, and all that drama, but the new dawn for Willow Creek lay right ahead, glimmering with promise and the strength of unity that lingered long after one person's grip on control had finally loosed its hold.